Good evening, everyone. You are very welcome to this evening's Coach Development webinar in association with O'Neill Sports. The webinar this evening is titled The Athletic Triangle and will be delivered by Ulster GA Player Welfare Officer Ryan Mellon. Over to yourself, Ryan.
Thanks, Gareth. And you're very welcome tonight. As Gareth mentioned, tonight our topic is the athletic triangle. It may be something that you haven't heard. That's not a phrase that you may have heard before. Sometimes it's known as the CAP model as well, the coach, athlete, parent model. So what's it about? Really, the idea of the model or the triangle is that the way each member of the triangle interacts with each other, or the relationship that they have with each other, can have a major impact on the development of the child or of the player. Okay, who's it aimed at? I think it's aimed at any youth teams. So if, say for example, you're a coach of a youth team from Go Games right the way up to minor level, under 17 level, under 19 level. And again, that word level, it could be just a club team, it could be a school team, or indeed it could be a county development squad or a county under 17 squad. The same principles apply. Hopefully tonight, at the end of the workshop or the end of the webinar, what you'll have a clear understanding of is the following. So why is the coach-parent relationship so important? We'll speak about the role of the coach, and not just the role of the coach on the pitch, what's expected on the pitch, but the role of the coach to engage with the parents and open the lines of communication with the parents. And we'll also speak about the role of the parent as well. So quite often as parents, it can be quite difficult to know how to support your child in sport without overstepping the mark. So we'll cover that as well. So jumping right in, so the athletic triangle, why is it important? I suppose we'll go over to the left-hand side here first. Interactions between the members of this triangle can have significant consequences for the psychological development of the child. So how the coach and the parent, I suppose, how they communicate with each other, how they interact with each other can have a significant impact, either positively or negatively, on the mental aspect of the child's development. Down to the left, bottom left here, parents can influence the quality of the coach-athlete relationship through their perceptions, interactions, and feeling towards the coach. Okay, so in other words, I'll explain what that means. Say, for example, a coach and a parent have a very good relationship. Okay, it's very open and they know what each other's about. Obviously, that's going to filter down to the player and you get more buy-in from the player. The flip side of that is, say, for example, that the coach and the parents don't really communicate. They don't know what each other's trying to do. Maybe there's decisions happening that are kind of baffling the parent and they don't understand the reason for it. That's maybe going to frustrate the parent, and that's going to radiate down to the player as well. Moving on from that up to the top right-hand corner here, coaches and parents need to understand the relationship components such as mutual trust, belief, support, cooperation, and communication that contribute towards an increased level of performance and satisfaction for their child. And finally, parents, guardians have the most influence over their children. Okay, so that's important. As coaches, we may work with our teams and the young players maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 times a week, or sorry, 4 hours in the week. It's not a lot of time to actually have a lot of impact. So when you think about it, the parent or the guardian is in the ideal position who spend the most time with the child, probably who the child takes a lot of their lead from. So as coaches, we should be encouraging parents to get involved more and engage the parents as much as we can in order to enhance the child's development. Now, normally if I was doing this in a workshop environment where there was parents and players and coaches in the room, I would do a task, and it's quite a powerful task. So I would visualize, even say in a club where you're pulling together the parents, the coaches pull together the parents and the players for that kind of start of season meeting. a very, very powerful exercise would be to get the parents into a group and ask them to brainstorm all the things that they expect from the coach. Okay. The other side of that, get all the coaches together and ask them what do they expect from the parents and see what they come back with, and then the players as well. So what does the player expect from the coach and from the parent? So as I say, it's a powerful task to do. Unfortunately, we can't do it tonight, but it just, I suppose the purpose of it is to give each other an idea of what way the other person's thinking or what they expect. I've had a go at putting together what maybe has come up in the past. So the needs of the player, it needs to be fun. They need to enjoy it. They'll need praise from the coach and from the parent. They need to be involved in interacting with their friends. They require positive correction. They require one-step goals. So not all these different goals at once, just step-by-step guides to how they can improve. They'll want positive feedback. They need a purpose. They need to understand what it is the coach is asking them to do. They need patience. They need choices. So if something's not working out for them or a particular way of a skill, they need a choice as to maybe how they can try it a different way. And the big thing as well is expectations. And the expectations is going to come up in each of the groups. Okay, maybe I'll just explain why that's so important. Quite often, a player's expectations at the start of the year, they might just be there for the crack. They might just like going out and playing with their friends. Or you'll get another player who will, be down there and they'll be living it 8 days of the week, training as much as possible, practicing as much as possible, and wanting to get the best out of themselves. So I think it's very, very important that each group, the coach, lays out their expectations at the start of the year, and the parent lays out their expectations. Okay, so just to make sure that they're in the same hymn sheet, because quite often that's where the conflict can arise, in a club environment. So a coach could be very much motivated by just developing the players, making sure that they're having fun, making sure that they're developing at a certain pace. Whereas the expectation of the parent might be that the club are going to these Go Games blitzes to win them all, or to win an under-13 league, or to win a championship. And quite often, if that's not clarified at the start, that's where the conflict can come in. Okay, so So what does the coach need? What does the coach need from the parent and from the player? They need attendance. Okay, commitment, focus, drive, skills, support, respect. They need the parent and the player to listen, to show character, to allow them to learn, or to be open-minded enough to learn. They need trust, and again that word expectations that we've just spoke about. From the parent side of things, and this is very important, that the parent really requires communication from the coach and an understanding what they're trying to do. They need trust, the fun, caring, patience as well, a purpose, choices as to, again, as I mentioned earlier, maybe the skill mightn't be working out for their child in a particular way, so they might need a choice as to how they could try a different way to master the skill. And again, as I've said there, managing expectations. And maybe the thing that I haven't mentioned, and if you go to the title of the actual slide, when you think about it, we all want the same thing. We want what's best for the child, and we want them to develop and move forward. Okay, so the role of the coach. This is the on-field stuff now that we normally associate with the coach. Okay, so an organizer, the coach will organize when training's on, and who needs to be there, and the other coaches that's going to work with the team. They'll coach the team, the technical side of things, so the skills and the tactics. They'll be expected to give instruction and explanation. They'll be expected to demonstrate, the skills of the game, and then observe and analyze. So they've given the demonstration, allow the kids to go away and have a practice at it. And then the key thing is to observe what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, how they can improve. It obviously has to be a safe environment. And the big thing is feedback and communication. If the child won't know what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, obviously there's a skill in itself in that as to how you feed that back, or how you get your message across as a coach. Okay. But the role of the coach actually doesn't stop there. I think it's very, very important that the coaches do involve parents. I can understand sometimes as coaches, we can be a wee bit, we can exclude parents because we don't know actually how to manage the expectations, or we don't know how to involve the parents properly. Quite often coaches think, I have enough on my plate here trying to coach these players, never mind trying to, manage the expectations of the parents as well. So I suppose what we're going to investigate, or what we're going to look at now, is what are the benefits of involving the parents. Okay, if parents feel a connection and understanding with the coach, they're more likely to be complimentary about them, leading to feelings of trust, closeness, and commitment. And as I said at the very start, if that's coming from the parent, that's going to, I suppose, radiate off the parent to the child as well. Okay. When the going gets tough, so say for example they've lost a big game or whatever, or played poorly, it's the support of the parents that has the greatest influence on the child or on the players. Parents are the main support network for their child. So as I said, the coach has very, very limited time with the players, and if there has been a bad defeat or there has been a setback, it's normally the parents who pick up the pieces rather than the coach. And obviously, as we spoke about as well in the last slide, both coaches and parents want the same thing. Okay, so one thing I would recommend, I think it's very important if you're a coach taking on a youth team, is to organise the pre-season coach parent meeting. Okay, so you as a coach, you're initiating the communication. Okay, it's probably your place to do that. You're initiating the communication between, I suppose, yourself and the parent. The meeting will also improve parents' understanding of what you're trying to do. So give them an indication at that meeting what it is that you're trying to do. And that word expectations comes in there again. So make it clear from the very start, this is what you're setting out to do. Show gratitude for what the parents do. So recognize what the parents do in terms of, bringing their child and staying there and helping out and washing the kit and all the things that the parents do. I think you get off on the right foot by recognizing that and showing gratitude for what they do. It's a good time to outline your coaching philosophy. Okay, that sounds very high end, but just the way you feel that the game should be played and how you feel that the year will run out, or how things will pan out throughout the year. As I say, sometimes the major conflict that you have with at youth level and clubs is some parents want to go all out, win, and that's the only thing that matters. Whereas some parents or some coaches want to go out and all they're focusing on is making it an enjoyable environment and improving the player bit by bit. This one's very important. Maybe I've touched on it. Clarify expectations. So what you expect from me, and in turn as a coach, what I expect from you as a parent. Okay. And then obviously this is important as well. Establish who deals with complaints or have a process. Even this might be a wee bit extreme, the word complaints. So establish maybe a channel of communication. I suppose as coaches we can't be accessible 24/7 with work and other commitments. So I think it's a good idea to be accessible, but to, I suppose, give parents a time or a specific day or a time in a day when you're contactable if they want to complain, or even if they've just got a query. If it is a complaint, I think something that has worked well in the past that I've heard about is the 48-hour rule. So just to describe what the 48-hour rule is, quite often parents can go to a game and maybe their child has been taken off or haven't got on in the first place, or they're being played out of position, and all of a sudden they start getting angry, they start getting emotional, and they maybe charge over to the coach at the end of the game. And when you think about it, the coach is probably in the same boat. They're coaching the game, they're emotional, probably a wee bit angry, maybe the result hasn't gone with them. And when you're in that environment and two people clashing, obviously it results in conflict, and that conflict can sometimes be hard to resolve. So what the 48-hour rule is about, so say you're that parent who's really annoyed at your child being taken off or not being put on or whatever it is, sleep on it for 48 hours. So give it 48 hours until you calm down again, until the emotion goes out of it. And quite often what can happen in that space of time is you think to yourself, I understand. I can see clearly now why the coach made that decision. My child wasn't at training there during the week, or I can see he's trying to develop other skills by playing them in that position. Okay, so that's really what the 48-hour rule is about. And I will say, if it's still annoying you and you're still angry after the 48 hours, by all means, go ahead and make the phone call and clarify why the decision has been made. Okay, so that's, I think, the reasons on the slide there are, that's a really good excuse or a really good reason to have the pre-season coach parent meet. Okay, last thing is the one-page handout to take away. I think what you include in this, and quite often maybe it's more important at the higher levels. So say, for example, you're involved in an academy squad or a school team, and you have to cut players and you have to let go of players. That can be quite difficult. So I think at the start of the year, if you actually give a one-page handout of what it is, what type of players that you want or what you expect from your players, it could be things like, really resilient, or, a high work rate, or practicing off both feet. If you're saying that at the very start of the year, you're making them, you're being very, very clear about what you're expecting from the player. So when it comes to that stage in the season where you might have to let a player go or cut a player, it's easier for you as a coach to point to the handout that you give to them to say, listen, we're looking for players with work rate. Your work rate isn't great, or your tackling's letting you down, or whatever it is, your attitude, or whatever that is. That I suppose that's your ammunition as a coach to justify your decision for letting a player go, and then that can become a personal improvement goal for the player to work on those things, and they may be considered again. Okay. During the season, so suppose you've opened the challenge of communication, it probably shouldn't end there. So after initiating a relationship, maintain regular communication. So an idea would be to be available if parents wish to discuss anything and keep them informed of what's happening. And again, you have to, I suppose, have parameters around that. You can't be accessible 24/7. So make sure that you're making it clear when you are accessible. And another idea is 5 minutes. So 5 minutes after arrival, maybe it would be an idea to distribute a session plan and explain what you need worked on at home. So I suppose that if the parent arrives with the child, have some of the copies of the actual session that you're going to do, have it explain what it is you're trying to work on, and then maybe included in that as well is what you need the player to work on at home. Because quite often the conflict that arises in clubs anyway is kids go down, say, on a Tuesday night to training, and they never look at another hurl or another ball until they go back the next Tuesday night. Where you've got other kids who, practice every night of the week in order to get better. And quite often then what happens is on the Saturday, the child who's really, really putting the effort in and trying to get better, sometimes their game time can be sacrificed by letting another child on who probably isn't making anything of it or not making any effort to improve. So again, that's important to, I suppose it's like homework. Make the parent aware of what it is, what the skills you're trying to develop, and how your child can do that at home. And obviously provide feedback to the parents who can pass it on to their children. That's quite important as well. And remember the point that I mentioned earlier, the kids take their lead mostly from their parents. Okay, if a coach gives some feedback to a child, maybe it's criticism or whatever way they do that, sometimes the child can shut off and not listen or not really understand what it is they're being told. Whereas if you communicate that with the parents, the parent can then bring that message home and try to, I suppose, pass that on or embed that with their child. Okay, so that's the role of the coach. The parents obviously have a role to play as well, and quite often it can be difficult as a parent to know, how actually to support the coach and your child without overstepping the mark. I suppose we have a few ideas here. So avoid pressurizing the child about winning or losing. Encourage. That's quite obvious. Allow your child to play for himself or herself. So quite often you have parents that just want their child to be the next big thing or want to have a big career or whatever, and maybe the child isn't ready for that, or maybe that's not in their agenda. Give your child freedom to problem solve and make their own decisions. And quite often, if you go to a Go Games Blitz, and we don't mean it, but you're watching a game, and every time a child gets a ball, there's about 4 different coaches and parents shouting from the sideline, pass it to him, or run there, or kick it to her, or trying to give instructions as the child's playing, rather than letting the child actually make their own decisions and developing themselves. Moving on, do not constantly instruct during games and training. I suppose maybe that number 4 and number 5 there are tied into each other. Respect and do not interfere with the coach. So that's important as well. The coach has got their philosophy. They've got the things that they want to work on, and quite often it's not doing any help. It's not helping the child to start maybe shouting in things that conflict with what the coach is doing. Help a child to separate sport failure from personal failure. I think really what that means is you have to normalize, the poor performances, normalize the defeats. It's going to happen. It's normal in sport. So, prepare your child for that. Watch what you say to your child. Encourage your child to take responsibility for their decisions and focus on the process, not the result. Okay, I suppose Jim Gavin, when he was over Dublin, he heard about this process all the time, and you can look into that as to what he meant by the process. But I suppose really what it means is, in training, practicing the skills and focusing on the training and step by step, rather than putting all the emphasis on the games at the weekend. Okay, so that's some ideas about how the parent can maybe speak to their child, or how they can behave around the group. There's different types of parental involvement. Quite often you'll see the under-involved parents. They're just maybe there because the child wants to go, somebody in their class is going, they're disinterested or misinformed. You'll get the moderately involved, and probably this is the recommended way for a parent to be supportive, a good listener, to be child-centered, and to be balanced. And quite often, again, we can all think of examples of the over-involved parent. Maybe they're a bit excitable or fanatical about their child's performance. They become overly concerned with winning, and they maybe put undue pressure on the child with that as well. So I think you'd agree, or Sarvius, the middle one there is probably what's doing the child the most benefit. Again, quite often as a parent, it can be hard to talk to your child and say the right things after a game, maybe if they've had a poor performance, or maybe if they played really, really well. Some ideas around this would be: did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? What did you learn? What happened in that game? What did you learn today different from what you've experienced before? Did you try out any new skills or ideas? Did you try hard? Was your work rate there, or were you at half pace? Did you maximize what you were trying to do? And a big one as well is, what do you think you need to work on for the next day and improve on? Okay, and just something that I came across, I think it's an important message for parents. Your child's success or lack of success in sport does not indicate what kind of a parent you are. But having an athlete or a child that is coachable, respectful, a great teammate, mentally tough, resilient, and tries their best is a direct reflection of your parent. Okay, so what I think what that's saying is, your child doesn't have to be the superstar of the team, but at that level, at youth level, the things written in black there that are the most important things to embed into your child. Okay, so we're nearly there. We've covered quite a bit. So just a bit of a summary in terms of from a coach's point of view. It's big. It's very, very important to schedule a coach-parent meeting early in the season. Again, for the reasons that you're opening that channel of communication, you're laying out the boundaries, you're managing the expectations, and it's just giving you that opportunity to explain what you're about and build some rapport with the parents. Regular feedback to the parent and player is so important. And again, probably at a younger age, the feedback probably is of more benefit when it comes through the parent than directly to the player. And obviously, establish who deals with questions or complaints, or when you're contactable. Just have a process, and I would really recommend introducing the 48-hour rule as well, and see how you get on with that. From a parent's point of view, make sure you're communicating with the coach and try your best to reinforce messages away from training, or to maybe, I suppose, practice, set a bit of time aside in the week to practice the skills that have been worked on during the week. Okay, so learning outcomes, hopefully at this stage, you have a bit more of a clear understanding of why the coach-parent relationship is so important, and how the player can actually benefit when that relationship's good. You'll understand the role of the coach, and it's much more than just throwing down a few cones and putting kids through drills. You have to manage the whole environment around, and the parent as well, how you can buy in and weigh in behind the coach, and how you can support your young players. Okay, so that's everything that I need to get through. I'll maybe hand back to Gareth there if any questions have come through.
Yeah, Grant, Kieran here, you can hear me okay? Yeah.
Good man, Kieran, yeah.
Yeah, just a few questions from the coaches before the actual webinar tonight. And you've touched on at the very, very start in terms of your communication, and your having your meeting with parents in the pre-season, which was an excellent topic to draw out any issues and sort of draw up a code of conduct or such around between the coaches, the players, and the parents. So the parents have a clear expectation in black and white. This is my club this year. This is what we're going to do. Every child we get equal playing time. Every child we get their skills enhanced and developed. Or some clubs maybe are aiming to win the championship. So again, you covered that there in the first part of your presentation. There's one came up here from one of the coaches in terms of, and our old friend Terence McWilliams, who's retired a few years ago. In terms, when is the best opportunity for developing a child's fitness or speed development? When's the best time, the window of opportunity, we'll call it, we're in?
Yeah, I suppose, Kieran, that it's not really, I suppose, tied into the topic. I suppose tonight, that'll be definitely maybe somebody more from the sports science end of things.
Yeah,
so I don't know, you have a lot of experience in that area there yourself, and as a coach for many years with young kids. Would you have any ideas as to what age would be the best time to start to introduce
I personally think from 10 to 12 years of age. Now, obviously, we're not talking about running the children into the ground in terms of speed and agility and stuff like that there, but there's an opportunity there to develop wee fun activities and games, but with the ball around, the ball being the centre of everything. And at least the children are developing their speed, the agility, turning, twisting, and they're doing it in a fun way without realising they're putting in a wee bit of hard work in terms of their speed development. So that's something that Terence, who was yourself was a guru with us in the past, and he always encouraged that as well. Another question: how do you get buy-in from parents then who are not from a GAA background? What would be your advice there?
No, that is reality. I suppose that reaching out to them is important as well, because quite often, if they're not from a GAA background, there's fear there. There's fear that they won't know, I suppose, how to coach the child. They won't know, as say the child gets home and the child's asking them, can you help me with the skills or whatever. There's a wee bit of fear there. So I would say that the best thing to do would be to have the channels of communication open, and listen, to step in during a few training sessions, and particularly at youth levels, you learn a lot by just being there at the cold face, and the basics. You're just really coaching the basics at that time. So the fear factor is a big thing, and I would encourage any coach just to reach out to those people that haven't had the experience, and support them during the session, and ask them to get involved.
Yeah, and maybe shadow and a more experienced coach, and throw yourself in at the younger age group, Ryan, because it probably is getting more technical and tactical up to minor, under 21, senior. But getting involved at the under 6, under 8s, under 10s it's a good opportunity, and the kids are really engaging at that age as well.
Yeah.
Last question for yourself, Ryan, is probably something that is overemphasized right up to senior football as well. What is the correct balance between athletic and fitness training and skills-based training? Because we get carried away with doing the S&C and all the conditioning, but are we neglecting the skills-based training in this day and age, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose, I think, to be honest with you, it's part of the it's all part of the puzzle. I think that there's 5 different areas. I think you talk about the physical end of things. We get obsessed with the strength and the power of our players and the endurance of our players, and it's an important thing, but it's only part of the puzzle. I think obviously the skills are very, very important. The technical side of things, right the way up through the pathway to up to senior level, and it's important to still work on them at senior level. Tactics are important as well. And again, our game has changed so much in this past number of years that sometimes now it's the team with the best tactics rather than the best talent that actually wins the game. The mental side of things has become important now as well. Confidence and concentration, things like that. And obviously, I think the 5th thing that comes in is the lifestyle of the players. Are the players living the life? Are they hydrating? Are they eating? Fueling themselves properly? Are they getting enough sleep? All those things. So I suppose maybe that's a very broad answer, but I think it's important that there's 5 different key areas there for me, and you've got to tap into them all in order to get to get that back out onto the pitch again.
Yeah, you touched around there in the last one, the lifestyle. Probably it's the generation that we're in. It's when both yourself and we were playing, it was mobile phones were only coming on the scene, and kids hadn't got access to phones they could do these days, and maybe it's distraction both physically and mentally for them, and maybe they're coming to training, maybe they're not switched on because maybe they're up half the night, maybe on WhatsApp or on Facebook or whatever it may be. So it is, you're right, it's finding that balance is very, very important. We have another question here, and just came in live, sorry, to the chat box. Would you give children at home a wee skill booklet or tasks to work with parents at home, so like a wee skills based stuff that the parents can work with, maybe who aren't an experienced GA coach or an experienced GA? Yeah,
I definitely would. I think I touched on that slightly. I think if you get time as a coach, it'll be great to have your session planner done up and run off like whatever it is, 20 copies of those, and gather the parents around and explain what it is that you're trying to do, and somewhere included in that as well, you could have it embedded that things to practice at home. So, and again, probably with lockdown, we saw that happening quite a bit, with clubs, I suppose, sending out video challenges and things like that. That was maybe a good thing that came out of lockdown, where the kids were all given tasks or whatever to do, and you could see who could do the most solos in a certain amount of time or whatever. So that's probably a positive that has come out. But certainly, if you think about it, the coach has very, very limited time over the week to spend with the child, and it's actually, I think it's more to do with what you do away from that time that's going to actually make the difference.
Yeah. Just one more question came in here in the chat box, Ryan. If my child is not getting much game time during the duration of the season, is it onus on me, the parent, to go and approach the coach or a club rep?
Yeah. Listen, I would say communication is a really good thing, and quite often as coaches, you have a lot there to deal with. And sometimes it actually can slip under the radar, maybe the players that aren't getting enough game time. So it could just be something that the coach hasn't recognized, and I certainly would, as a parent, in a kind of a mannerly way, I would approach the coach and make it clear to them what's happening. Depending on the coach's response. Say, for example, the coach said, "God, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of it." That's probably the matter dealt with.
Yeah.
If a coach comes back to you and says, "Listen, they're not good enough, and we need to win this game or whatever, and they're probably not going to get any more game time," that's probably the time to get maybe a club rep. Or most clubs have like youth development officers or whatever in place, so it's maybe a time to make contact with them and pass it on to them, and then they can maybe have a chat to the coach about it.
Yeah, it's just myself, I'm a safeguarding tutor, and just remember done a presentation the other night, and one of these questions did come up, and one of the answers is actually, if you don't feel comfortable approaching maybe a coach who you maybe find intimidating, or you just maybe don't have a rapport with them, you get in touch with your children's officer within the club, and they'll be the liaison between you and the coach. And maybe if it is, you need to have a sit-down meeting with the three of them. So that's an approach that the children's officer, that's their role as a children's officer to have in the club as well.
Yeah, and listen, Kieran, it comes up every time, when you go out to a foundation course or whatever. There's the discussion around, is this team about winning or is it about development? And I suppose what keeps coming up, like quite often you'll get a child who will come to the training session, say on a Tuesday night, and then never look at another ball or hurl or whatever it is again until they come back on the Tuesday night. And another child will be practicing every night of the week. And is it fair that the child who practices lose out in game time to the other child who's really not interested? So I think it's important to point that out, that as a coach and doing it at the very start of the year is, the child's here they don't have to be the best player, but they're here to develop. They're here to, it's like anything else, you're not going to get any further by just practicing at it one night a week. So I think you've got to make that very, very clear to the parents that yes, we're here training. It's great to be here, but they've got to try to develop the other 2-3 nights a week wherever they can fit that time in.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's all the questions in the chat box, and the questions that came in previously ran through the Eventbrite. I think you've answered during the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so can I just thank, on behalf of Ulster GAA, Ryan, for the very informative presentation tonight. I think it was excellent that all the questions that were answered, and that's Ryan's remit: player welfare and player lifestyle. So Ryan, thanks very much from your end. Have you anything to finish on before we leave?
No, that's it, Kieran. As I say, hopefully it's been informative. It's not an area, I suppose, that's given much attention, but I think I suppose the key message I'm supposed to leave you with is that parents, players, and coaches, they all want the same thing, and again, so they may as well, I suppose, have that open relationship with each other and try to enhance the development of the child.
Yeah, super.
Okay, thank you, Kieran.
Okay, folks. Good night. Thank you, Ryan.